What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 91, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by two good friends and co-host Roffle and Corbett. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. We've got riding a big wave of hopium after the very end of last week. We got some very good news that I'm very excited to discuss with the two of you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to dig into everything. I'm very prepared. I just got out of the shower 2 minutes ago. I'm very ready for this podcast right now.
Yeah, we keep having to record at weird times now, and so we keep like waking up Corb either at like 6 a.m. or like keeping him up until like 1 a.m. So
I prefer this.
Bad,
This is okay. I don't mind this one.
All right, a little bit less spat than the others. But yeah, I mean, Raffle kind of alluded to it. We got some pretty big news this week. In what was seeming like an otherwise very depressing week of having to keep playing against Switcheroo Priest and Kael'thas Druid, but at the very end of the week, we got a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. We got the announcement of the announcement, essentially, from Gallant over on Twitter, basically announcing changes that were coming this upcoming Tuesday. And so April 26th, we're going to get changes to both Standard and Wild. So I'll read through these kind of all together, and then we'll dive into them one by one. Obviously, let's dive into the big ones, right? Kael'thas and Switcheroo are getting addressed. So Kael'thas is getting a reversion back to every third spell you cast each turn cost 1. And so it's kind of I think the middle ground, right?
It's the second iteration of the card. Yeah. It's the first time they nerfed it. That's what it did. And that was right.
Well, last
they
time
went from 6 to 7. Still costing 0, and then it went 7 to.
So this is
7.
This is the brand new version.
We're getting the fourth version,
right?
For the first time ever. I don't think there's ever been a card that's done
yeah,
this,
you're right. I think I'm misremembering.
Yeah.
Yes. Originally, it was just a mana bump to 7. Then they changed it to this. Now they're going back to this, but at 6 mana, which is actually like maybe worse for Druid if they were planning to use it, because then they can't tutor it with Psych Melon. So
Yeah. Regardless, it is basically killing the OTK deck on turn 3, turn 4, which is kind of the big thing that we wanted out of this change. So I'm super excited to see this announcement. And then the other one, we have our third banned card here in Wild. Switcheroo is banned, and they are changing it and balancing it for Standard. But in Wild, Switcheroo will be banned, and so. These the tweet that Gallant put out, both of these changes are aimed at protecting the long-term health of the format. We will be getting a more detailed explanation when they release the patch notes on Tuesday. But how are you guys? What are your guys' initial impressions? How excited are you seeing these two changes?
Very excited, because I was very tired of queuing into Druids and Priest, and in the case of Priest, just kind of auto-conceding because I wanted to play Hearthstone, and like it was more likely maybe I queue into a different type of Druid, which some of the other types of Druids are getting addressed in this patch kind of incidentally as well. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I want to play Hearthstone, and I really didn't feel like those two decks were playing Hearthstone. Again, we talked about it just last week. It had really like Darkest Hour type tendencies where flip a coin. If your opponent drew the cards, they win. If they didn't, they lose. But probably better than a coin flip in both cases. And the decks are doing pretty well, especially from what I hear at rather high legend ranks. Things were just abysmal in terms of repeatedly queuing into these decks. I was fortunate enough not to hit legend early this month, so I got to avoid it for the most part. But still, when it comes up, it's obnoxious. Kael'thas, I think, is perfect. Do whatever. I don't care. Like, nobody's going to play the card anymore anyway, because it's not, like, auto-winning the game. Switcheroo, kind of disappointed, because I like the card as a minion tutor and priest. But I understand why they can't leave it as it is going to be in Standard in Wild, because in Wild we have a little bit more redundancy in some of the health buff combos. We have Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, Topsy-Turvy, Vivid Nightmare. Like, yes, you're adding a combo piece to it, and initially I thought maybe this would be enough to do it, but there's so much redundancy in that there's Bless as well, so you have 3 different pieces that can buff up that health to replace the Vivid Nightmare, even to the point where or work in conjunction with it. So yeah, now it's a 3-card combo, but it still wins the game way too early. That's still very dangerous. So disappointed that there wasn't maybe some sort of I guess middle ground where you could um, make it playable in standard while not deleting it from wild. I feel like this is maybe the first one of these where we really had an opportunity to see that. Because with like Steel Souls, when it got banned, it was kind of trash in standard. Um, Same thing with the quest line was good, not overwhelming. Um, so the ban seemed kind of necessary here. Here, I think that I can't think of one that would have maybe been um, a middle ground, but I would have liked to see it. So I'm curious what it'll be when it finally rotates, because it's only potentially going to get more dangerous if they leave it similar to what it is now, right? Where they're only going to add more of those health buffs or damage buffs in the future, because that's kind of a part of Priest's identity. So what are they going to do with it? And could that have been a card that they printed, or could that have been the change that they made just now? Because I want to play this card in other decks. I want to play it in Silence Priest. I want to play it in like Mill Priest. I want to play it in a lot of Dark Glare Priest. I haven't had a chance to play that yet because I've been waiting to see what happens to Switcheroo. Now it's just gone. So kind of bummed.
Yeah.
Before Corb hops in here, I do want to, I guess we didn't mention what the change to Switcheroo was for standard. So Switcheroo went from swapping stats to only swapping health, right? So that's why Roffle was talking about still having access to stuff like Topsy, Inner Fire, and Bless. So yeah, sorry to butt in there, but go ahead.
No, you're good. These changes are kind of just what I ended up landing on, like what they were gonna have to do, because Kael'thas, I mean, that was obvious, right? Like I thought that they were just gonna put it back to 1. Whether it was at 7 or 6, I don't think it matters either way. I guess they just, like make it a little bit more powerful than it was, sure. It is kind of funny though that we are getting this like 4th version of the card. It's very weird, so it is what it is. But yeah, as for Switcheroo, it's kind of funny. It's one of the times I think the Hearthstone balancing has been really encumbered by the name and the art of a card, because like if it wasn't Switcheroo, if it was just Roo, maybe we could just have it draw 2 minions. But there needs to be some aspect of the flipping and the switching, and it made it very, very difficult, because like whether you're doing things like, oh, just swap the, like draw 2 minions and then those individual cards have their health and cost swapped. There's some really dangerous stuff there with like the giants, right? All of a sudden you're getting like 8 mana, 8/20 Naga giants and things like that. Or there was like a whole bunch of other suggestions about like mana flipping, and there's nothing elegant. Like I thought the health change was what was going to happen. But the sad part is that, yeah, the health change means that it has to get banned. And it was kind of just a very awkward position, I think. And there was no elegant way to sort of keep that flavor and make the card playable and wild. Like Roffle said, I am also very sad about the card not being in the format, though, just because I was looking forward to, some of the priest stuff, and I think Giants Priest was going to be my new APM mage. I think that was kind of be my new degenerate choice of the year, and so that's been taken away from me a little bit. But that's okay. I'm happy to give that up to get rid of the board priest, I think. So, overall changes pretty much on the money as expected.
I mean, you still have some minion tutors, right? You still have Horn of Wrathion. Like, it's a lot worse. It's drawing you half the amount of cards, but it's still a minion. Like, you still have some stuff.
Nah, draw 2 is a lot better than draw 1. Like,
are you sure?
I think that deck is kind of dead in the water now. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you though. I'm kind of glad that they didn't try to give us this middle ground and then us still like sit there with Switcheroo Priest comboing us on turn 4 and still have, like, I will not lie to you. If Switcheroo Boar stuff wasn't happening, I think people would be complaining about Giants Priest, which was doing OG Dark Glare vibe stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Dropping 4 giants on turn 3, turn 4. People would have complained about that, I think, pretty quickly.
It's honestly not like a bad, like, collateral damage. Like, because I think the Giants Priest would have pissed a lot of people off. But, I think there'll also be some other things that there's always something people can get mad about. So, you know what? Yeah, it'll be fine.
I'm just really kind of glad that I finally get to play Hearthstone now. Like, I actually get to finally play. I haven't played Hearthstone in a week and a half, guys. Like, I'm clean. I followed through on my word that we were talking about when we had our Q&A episode of, like, what do you do when you're not, like, tilted, burnt out from the game, not enjoying? I just haven't played Wild in a week and a half, and I've been watching a lot of streams, and I've like watched the frustration of people when they queue into these decks, and I'm like, thank God I am not playing Wild right now, because that seems miserable to put yourself through. And I don't know how you guys have done it, to be completely honest with you, outside of like Roffle just auto conceding everything.
Oh,
You almost got your 2-week token, your little badge from the meetings.
Almost, but I'm going to be back on Tuesday, so I'm not even going to make it 2 weeks.
Auto conceding just takes all of the pain away. Now, spoilers, I know, but I also have been auto conceding the Pirate Warrior, so all of my problems are just gone. But before we leave Switcheroo, though, I think we'd be remiss not to talk about some of the like other theoretical problems that are in the deck that people maybe wanted to be addressed, and why those wouldn't necessarily be a solution. A lot of people pointed to Stone Tusk Boar, which, yeah, like Stone Tusk Boar is historically a problem. You know, you can make an argument that it's a little bit problematic in Quest Rogue, but like then you just have Bluegill Warrior at 2 mana and you're just bumping up the cost by 1. And so it's not really a solution to the problem. In the same way that I understand, you know, Darkness would be maybe a bit more of an easier card to fix with that. But that's also like yeah, it's a bad card, but like it's a meme card that people have like some sort of nostalgic attachment to, and I think that that's something that, you know, for better or worse, they've been shying away from making changes just to older cards that have that sort of, I don't know, fan appeal. Like you saw how furious people were over the Tyrantus issue. Imagine if they made some sort of change to the Darkness that like changed the way that card played. Like, you know, there would be a portion of people that would be mad about that as well. So I think that's what they're trying to avoid. I think that, you know, the Darkness would probably be the easiest one to change while still giving us access to some form of switcheroo. But there would also probably be a lot more technical considerations for some of the suggestions with changing the Darkness as well. A lot of people were saying, you know, don't allow switcheroo to interact with the dormant minion. Well, that's not just a switch you can flip. Same thing with like changing the candles to add stats after the fact. You can't add stats technically to a dormant minion right now, so that's not something that's like they can just do in a matter of days. So you know, longer term solution, maybe that's an option when it rotates. I doubt it, because again, I don't think they're going to want to change the Darkness, but that's why those types of things probably aren't being implemented, and so it's not as easy, so it means we'd have to wait longer. And I'm just happy to get Switcheroo gone, or just the deck, not the card. But I'm just, again, like Meowth, I'm happy to be playing Hearthstone again on a more consistent basis with once Tuesday hits.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this isn't the time for it, but it also like brings up the conversation here of like, do you hit the enablers or like the symptoms when it comes to nerfs for some of these really like powerful or annoying to play against decks that have a reaction to the community? And so it's like, do you hit the boar or the Darkness, or do you hit the card that's enabling the degenerate deck in the switcheroo? So
I mean, people rioted when boar was changed last time, so like it's kind of a lose, right? Like we would have escaped this problem almost entirely. It would have been a 3 mana, I think, would probably be the cheapest charge otherwise, if they went through with the changes to boar and Bluegill Warrior that were planned. And people threw a fit. I understand why, because Anyfin Paladin is an awesome deck that I enjoy, and I didn't want to lose Bluegill Warrior. I didn't care about boar. Kill it. Do whatever you want with it. But like, we'd still have the Bluegill problem, so it wouldn't have been a solution. So like, you know, with some of these enablers, they can't touch them. They like, because that's kind of, I don't know, contrary to what the goal or purpose of the wild format is.
Yeah, I think in general, obviously they want to tackle whatever they think is going to be like the bigger long-term problem, and I think that you know, just getting rid of the Darkness and leaving the switcheroo in the format still would have probably presented long-term issues like a lot more likely. And then, yeah, like Roffle said, they're always probably going to lean towards nerfing new cards rather than old cards, because that's what Wild is, right? Like, this is the eternal format. Like, people have a lot less attachment to a card that's been out for 10 days than a card that's been in the game since 2013. And, you know, there's kind of a clear reason why they would go that route. But yeah, you know, funny thing, you mentioned the charges. You know, even if Bluegill and Boar were gone, Priest has weapons now. Like, it has Needle, it has Sphere. You probably could have done a deckhand combo, and it probably wouldn't have been that inconsistent. Like, really, I don't think it would have been that bad if you still played Needle. That's a lot of weapons. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this change was pretty on the money. It was just sort of a bit unfortunate that it isn't perfect, but you know, they're doing the best they can, I think.
Yeah. All right. Everybody rejoice that Kael'thas and Switcheroo are gone. But we have even more changes, including one that I think is going to make Roffle even happier. So starting off, the Pirate Warrior questline is getting hit yet again. The very last stage of the Pirate Warrior quest, where you play 3 pirates and you get Rokara, is getting an additional pirate tacked onto it. So now it is 3-3-3. So you have to play 9 pirates in order to get Captain Rokara. To be fair, this change was made for standard. Pirate Warrior was already kind of dead in Wild. When you looked at maybe not play rate, which is a completely fair way to assess a deck. But when I think on the podcast here, in VS reports and kind of just like general like legend sentiment, Pirate Warrior has been a very bad deck for maybe the greater part of a month and a half now. And so this deck really probably doesn't do a whole lot except maybe drive even more people away from Pirate Warrior at lower ranks here.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. I wouldn't call it a bad deck. Like the latest VS had it as the 3rd best deck, no matter what rank band you're looking at. So like it's still a very capable deck, and was still a very capable deck. This nerf isn't aimed at Wild. It's just kind of collateral damage, and you know I imagine I can't imagine me saying this like 2 or 3 months ago, but I think we're at a place where, you know, in Wild it probably wasn't that necessary. I think Pirate Warrior was already starting to get bullied, not only by the previous metagame, but some of the new decks that were introduced in Voyage. Mm-hmm. Aside from the 2 gross things that we just got done discussing, but things like the mech decks really seem to do a better job of playing for board than other decks in the past, because they just dump hand so quickly that they actually can kind of suffocate the Pirate Warriors' chances of swinging that board back, and that's where it excelled. The same is true at least in my limited experience with Pirate Rogue, that it just goes much faster. Like it's almost kind of working like a supercharged Shadow Priest in the past, of just like getting after the Pirate Warrior and killing it. So I think that we're beginning to be enough decks with the new ones that were introduced, as well as the ones that were previously kind of coming out, to stifle the Pirate Warriors a little bit, to where this probably wasn't super necessary, but I'm not going to complain, because you know, this is pretty much a guaranteed one or so. This combined with the previous one are pretty much a guaranteed like 1 turn slower. Like the other change was probably about a half turn in most cases. This is like probably bumps it up to a full turn in, like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much, but it probably completely eliminates the possibility of getting a turn 5 Rokara, just because it's like 9 pirates is a lot in terms of the cards necessary to draw. So it's just kind of like, it's slowing it down a little bit further, and I think that that's fine. That gives the aggro decks another turn to bully it and kill it. It gives dummies that hold Rokara in hand a chance to do so for another turn, giving slower control decks and Reno decks a chance to draw their rats, and even potentially Mutanus at this rate. So like Mutanus actually becomes a legitimate possibility if they get a bad draw, and I think that's a good thing. So yeah, I think it's just, even if the deck wasn't where it was previously, I think it's still a good change just for the health of the format, because I don't think that getting your infinite value engine online as quickly as it was capable of is a good thing.
Yeah, Pirate Warrior prior to the expansion was still very popular. It had kind of continued to drop a little bit, but by the end of it, it was around like a little under 15% at Upper Diamond, which is like high, but it wasn't, the 20 number, which is kind of what I was hoping for, right? Like for a long time, I was kind of talking about, I was hoping that counters would trickle down and the Pirate Warrior become a little bit less popular, and that happened a little bit. But like Roffle was saying, with the expansion, Pirate Warrior has very clear weaknesses. And there was kind of a reason why I thought it would eventually get pushed out. And a lot of those weaknesses are kind of being exploited right now with the mech decks and the Pirate Rogue and like all that kind of stuff. And the same kind of thing's actually kind of happening with Quest Hunter right now. We'll see how that ends up going. But ultimately, I think Pirate Warrior still had dropped off a lot at High Legend, but was still like a good deck at Low Legend, still a good deck at Diamond, still very good at like yada yada yada. And that's true in both Standard and Wild. Wild, it's obviously been a bit worse, but I'm talking like an expansion before. Anyway, the point is, I'm not, like, personally, I'm not affected by this change. Like, I don't queue into Warriors, so it doesn't bother me. But I guess I'm happy for the people that aren't happy. That are happy. Because, a lot of people despise this deck. It doesn't affect me. Pirate Warrior's gone. Good for them. I guess I will say that it is a little bit of a shame, I suppose, that Warrior is probably dead. Like, Warrior's probably deleted a little bit from Wild. But I guess, for a lot of people, they'll see that as a victory a little bit, just because it was only a one deck class, and they didn't like that deck. So, ultimately, sure. I think Pirate Warrior is probably still going to be good at Bronze, still going to be good at Gold, still going to be Silver, really quite solid, but overall it's going to be, taken down a notch or two, which, people will like.
All right, we have a couple more changes here, though. The next one is to a new card, Pufferfish, or Puffer Fist, or it's the 3-mana 3/4 that whenever your hero attacks, deal 1 damage to all enemies. So this card was tearing up Standard, to say the least. I don't know if we've really seen this card a whole lot yet in Wild. I guess the question is, do you think we still will see this card once it's getting nerfed from a 3/4 to a 3/3, still 3 mana?
I think we'll be less likely to see it, but I have been seeing it pop up in a variety of different decks, including some of the Pirate Rogue. I think it's probably a little bit too slow there, other than maybe in Reno versions. It's pretty decent when generated off of Pirate things in Pirate Warrior, and I think the reason we're really not seeing it is because nobody's playing like an aggro Demon Hunter. Like, the card seems pretty bonkers in a Demon Hunter deck where you have a 1-mana hero power that can activate it. And on top of that, nobody's really playing for board right now. So, like, there's no reason to do a 1 AoE to everything on board. But if we see a rise in Mech Paladin, it may be worth considering, because, like, blasting off those Divine Shields is pretty good. I think it's still a good card. It was probably a little bit too good, especially in Standard, just like as a baseline card. So, yeah, I think it's still a quality card, just not as high.
I'd been seeing a lot of Puffer Fist. It wasn't in the initial list, I think, because it's not a card that jumps out on paper pre-expansion, but I'd seen it basically becoming core in Pirate Rogue. The stats suggest it's actually one of the best cards in Pirate Rogue. It's like one of the top 2 or 3 cards, really. So very, very strong. Even if, it is 3 mana. So based on just how well it was performing, I wouldn't be surprised if it's still kind of playable, but it's hard to say, right? Like, 1 health nerf. That 4 health was so hard to remove for a lot of decks. And so we'll have to see where it lands, but Odd Rogue, Odd Demon Hunter, Pirate Rogue, any other aggro Demon Hunter, Pirate Warrior. Probably only like the Rogue decks are the most relevant out of that one. But we'll see where it ends up landing, because it was so strong even in Wild. And yeah, it was like way too good in Standard.
So we'll see once people start playing new decks here. We've talked a little bit about Switcheroo already. The next change is to Miracle Growth. So this is the 7-mana spell that Druid received, where you draw 3 cards and then you create a minion with taunt equal to the number of cards in your hand after you've drawn the 3. So for those of you guys that have been kind of out of tune into Standard, Ramp Druid is a pretty good deck. Miracle Growth turns out it's a pretty good card, kind of like we predicted. It is going up to 8 mana to try to curb what's going on in Standard. With it going to 8, how are we feeling about this? We'll talk about this kind of in conjunction with the next card here, because they kind of go in the same deck. So Kazakhstan's actually getting changed as well. So it is no longer a check your deck effect. It is a if you have played 4 dragons this game, 4 other dragons, then you play Kazakhstan and replace your deck with treasures. So, kind of removing one of the win cons for standard ramp druid, kind of making it a lot harder to activate and get that win con online, even in wild. So between Miracle Growth and Kazakhstan, and then I guess the Kael'thas nerf as well, how is Druid looking and feeling after these nerfs in our format?
Well, I think a quick and important distinction to make for Wild is this Miracle Growth is actually going from 0 mana to 8 mana. So like that's a pretty huge nerf in the Wild format. Because like the only place we really saw it seen a whole lot of play was in Kael'thas Druid. I had been seeing it pop up every now and then in like the slow Druid decks, but those have an abundance of draw already. Like Nourish was unnerfed as well for some reason, so like you still have access to that. If this is too expensive now, it's got flexibility, so it can slot in as a 1-card solution to either Overgrowth or Miracle Growth, whatever you need. So like I don't know that Druid needs Miracle Growth in order to be successful, because it was doing just fine without it prior to the expansion. But I think the Kazakhstan does kind of hurt, right? Because you're not going to be running 4 other dragons in your deck. So like potentially we're going back to the, if you want a 1-card win condition, it's got to be Cthulhu, which is quite a bit slower to get online than Kazakhstan, because you can't play it on curve. You have to hit all the pieces, and that takes time. Or even just like the Linecracker Mecha'thun might make a return, especially if we're seeing more board-based stuff, and that deck was doing quite well into those, just because it had better defense than some of the other versions. So I think Druid will still be fine. It's gonna take a big hit in Standard though, so I wouldn't necessarily anticipate a Guff change, which a lot of people were maybe thinking about if these are enough to hit it pretty hard. But I think the generally speaking, I think the Kazakhstan change is a good one, because I think like having a 1-card win condition is just gross. Like it just feels so bad to lose to a singular card. Like I know it's a small anecdote, but like I was just goofing around with Mildruid the other day, playing Shellfish. Jeez, I can't say those words. The Shellfish. I was very selfishly playing the Shellfish, in order to selflessly give my opponent some cards, and I was in an unlosable position against a control warrior, where I was way ahead in fatigue. I was about to burst them down with the 2 remaining Shellfish that I had on the board, and they just suddenly hit me with a Kazakhstan into the copy spell effect and just blasted me down. It's like, well, because I failed to burn that 1 card, and because you successfully drew that 1 card, you win the game. And that's a lot of times how Kazakhstan felt, primarily in Druid, but like in Standard and a lot of other decks, and in the future in Wild. Like it's another card that prohibits a control-based game plan, right? And that's not a very popular card in a lot of people's minds. So I think it's probably good to get it online, or get it out of the game. And Druid was the one that was primarily abusing that, but that's fine. They've got other tools.
The Miracle Growth would be hard to judge, just because we haven't seen it without Kael'thas. Like Roffle said, it's hard to judge the card going from 0 to 8. I don't know. We'll see. It was very powerful, and I'm sure like Alignment Druid will probably still play it, because it has the nature tag, right? So it's still like pretty decent with like Anaconda maybe. But we'll see. Kazakhstan, I love this change. I think this is so good. Making the deck more actually focused around the dragons, not just the splash it in anything. I think Druid will probably still be looking to play it, and it will still be quite good. Just because, like, I think Breath of Dreams, a number of the dragons that you're already playing in Nixie or Sarah are very good, and Emerald Explorer isn't a terrible card, and it also, like, gives you another dragon to, like, play, which is kind of a little bit of fuel for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Dragon Druid is still the best slow version of Druid, but it'll be a lot closer, right, between, like, that and Line Cracker. And then Cthulhu will probably still be sadly worse than the others. But yeah, I really like this change. I don't think Kazakhstan is going to see play too much anywhere outside outside Druid, but if you are playing like kind of off meta stuff and you are just kind of like mess around and goof around, it's actually a lot easier now to probably play Kazakhstan than before. You know, if you want to play it in some sort of like Reno Priest or Reno Mage, you can probably like do a much better job, and that's also a really big benefit. So good to see on that front as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it makes it easier, like, it makes it worse in Druid, but, like, I can actually play it in, like, LPG Mage now, right? You can actually play it in Reno Paladin. You can probably play it in Reno Priest. I don't know what other Dragon decks there are out there. Maybe that Menagerie Warrior, run this as your top end, because you have the Amalgams and the Tent Trashers, right? Like, you have 4 dragons in there. I am trying really hard. I think it makes it a lot more interesting of a card, like you said. Like, it makes it worse, but by opening up deck building opportunities in the format, I think that's a good thing. I'm so excited to see, you know, maybe I'm excited to see less of it, but I'm also excited to see it in other decks potentially as well. So
it'll be a fun surprise when you see it, right?
Exactly.
Like that's hopefully, yeah.
And I think it's a powerful enough effect that it should ask more of you than just like don't have any minions in your deck, which is really what it was checking, because you know, so like, yeah, it should require more thought than just like put this card as your top end, you know, win the game when you draw it, or win the game shortly after you draw it.
Yeah. All right. So that's gonna wrap it up for the patch that's coming on Tuesday. I mean, I'm assuming we're happy with it. We talked about this a lot. We're happy with all the changes that are coming. I guess I will lead with a couple questions here. The first one, were there some cards that you were hoping they touched on this, or were expecting to or not? You were hopeful that they touched, and they didn't.
I think maybe my one concern, and I don't even like, I don't know how big of a concern it is, but I feel like Swordfish is just too strong of a card, and I'm a little bit concerned by its power level in Wild. The problem is that Rogue is kind of just like trash tier in Standard, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it's possible that like an aggro Rogue could pop up out of some of these changes. Slowing Druid down could potentially help, because like, I mean, Druid is already bad to aggro, so slowing it down any further is only going to make it worse to aggro. I don't know how much people are playing around with a deck that's similar to what we see in Wild, but you also don't have the weapon fetches, which is a big part of why it's so strong in Wild. I think that the card could be 3 mana, deal 9 damage instead of 12, and still be very fine, right? Like it's just doing a lot of things, but I'm not yet convinced that the card needs a nerf in Standard, because I haven't really seen it play, because like what is there? All I've seen is Druids and Priests doing the broken thing. So, you know, the other broken things that are out there are kind of overshadowed by that and have been for a while. But I think that Rogue is at least slated to be very, very good coming up, even though, you know, it potentially was bullying some of those decks that were doing nothing in the early turns.
Yeah, there was not too many, I think, that like surprised me they didn't touch. It was gonna always be interesting to see what they wanted to do with Druid, whether it was gonna be Guff or, you know, ultimately they did go for Miracle Growth, which is interesting. Obviously affects our format probably a little bit less. I think Guff would have been probably a more significant change. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. As for any other nerfs, they didn't touch Demon Hunter. Gallon kind of talked about this in his thread when he was announcing the changes. The general idea is basically that with Druid becoming less of a late game like dominator, it kind of lets other control decks pop up. Things like Control Warrior, things like Holy Paladin. Also Holy Wrath. That's not right. Holy Paladin. And those kind of decks can kind of curb aggro. So, but like Roffle was saying, Rogue right now in Wild is doing exceptionally well, and good decks are getting nerfed, so it has to be broken, right? I'm not really sure. I think Rogue will still be one of the best decks, but I think that there are enough counters to it. I think the mech decks do actually quite well into Rogue. They look very promising there, and I think that Ramp Druid, you know, even if it's not doing Kael'thas stuff, Oakland Summons are still a hell of a card, and I think the slow Druid decks will still be popular probably. and those have a probably pretty solid matchup into Rogue. So, yeah, nothing at Sanders shocked me. In Wilds, I didn't expect it, but I wouldn't have been opposed to like a little Crab Rider change as well. You know, that would have been nice, I think. But hopefully it won't destroy the format in the next 6 months. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Flurgle talks as well. Is something that I've seen a
I've
lot.
given
Yeah.
up on that. I'm just like, that's not happening.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad that they addressed those two cards for Wild. I kind of am glad that we get to at least mess around with stuff before they hit other cards as well. To be completely honest with you, I would have loved for them to have printed Swordfish as a 3-mana deal 9 and then given me back something like Nitro Boost, because it definitely felt like Swordfish was the reason we didn't get Nitro Boost after playing Pirate Rogue, because that weapon is kind of gross. And by kind of gross, I mean absolutely really freaking gross. I think that giving the Pirate +2 attack is such an underrated aspect of that card, because I have played multiple games, like that first week of the expansion, where you like play the Swordfish, and then the next one you go like Smite plus a 5-mana Dread Corsair. And you're just like, hey, surprise, I have now 17 damage from hand. Have fun. So,
or even just a deckhand is like a phenomenal hit with that
exactly.
too. Like it's just, you know, another couple extra damage to face.
Yeah. But before people like overreact about the Rogue, like Corb mentioned a bunch of decks that were potentially really good. I think Inner Fire might also just like be solid into that deck with stuff like Devour and make a big Death Lord. And things like that, because currently I don't think the builds have any way to deal with something like a 2/16 Deathlord. I might be completely missing that, and like Crab Rider is good in that matchup as well. So we shall see how the meta shakes out once people actually get to play it. So
yeah, and I think one last thing on that front too is like even with a card like Swordfish, it's the reason it would be nerfed is very different than the reason that Switcheroo and Kael'thas would be nerfed, right? That's those were very clear play pattern issues. This is like a card strength issue. I think that's less of a necessary or immediate need to change. And to be honest, like going into Thursday, when it became clear that we weren't getting the change on Thursday or an announcement of the change on Thursday, I was very pessimistic that we were going to get one even this coming week or any sort of announcement this week, because there is a Masters Tour coming up, and when the news didn't break on Thursday, I just kind of resigned myself to the fact that we're going to have to wait yet another week until maybe the following Tuesday. So the fact that we're getting one, a week earlier than I began to start expecting is a bit of relief in and of itself. So I'm just going to enjoy playing the new set. It's like expansion day 2, or new expansion day again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing Hearthstone again.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to transition me into the next question that I was going to ask you guys. So, okay, so once the expansion finally drops on Tuesday, what are the first decks that you're going to be playing? What are we going to be talking about next week as the spicy meta breakers, or the decks that you enjoyed the most in the new expansion?
I guess I'll start by saying some of the decks that I've been enjoying prior to the expansion, while conceding to Druids and and Priests. And one of them was ironically actually probably pretty good into both of these decks, and it was a ping mage with Commander Sivara. But if you played your cards right, and I mean that quite literally, you could get so many copies of extra ice blocks that you could just take turn after turn after turn, while stacking the potentially wildfires in your Sivara as well. It's a deck that naturally wants to run Brand, so if you can clear your hand, you can get 6 cards back that you played. That includes the potential for 4 of those being ice blocks, and then on top of that, you've got Dawn Grasp as your hero, so that's now another ice block. It's got the potential for, what is that, 7? 7 ice blocks? 8. Enough to lose count is what it turns into, because like it basically, if you can survive until turn 5 and draw these cards, you can just ignore the board completely and start shooting the opponent in the face with your pings, because they're starting to stack up in damage already, and you can just like count on those extra ice blocks. So that was a lot of fun.
I've been playing a little bit of that Naga Ping Mage in standard. Um, Basically the same ideas, but instead of like ice blocks, you just get like a crap ton of wildfires. And like I was having my non-Dawngrasp hero power dealing 9 damage, and I was like, this is really fucking gross, right? Because you get your 2 wildfires plus Savaras plus discovered Savaras plus the 2/3 that discovers a spell plus the it gets kind of crazy in standard. So yeah, I think Ping Mage looks pretty spicy.
The Naga pool is, I wasn't even running any like discover effects, but the Naga pool is pretty small if you wanted to like bring an amalgam into the mix potentially. Like there's definitely some fun potential there. You could bounce it with Potion of Illusion, which I wasn't running. So you've got opportunities. I think Commander is a card to look at for just like Reno decks as well, not even necessarily a LPG, because I know I don't want to trigger that response from Corb. But I think that like it's just a high quality card that has some fun. I'm also interested to try out Libram Paladin. Got some pretty cool new tools in the Light Blade Boy, and even at the top end, maybe some extra damage with the 10 mana spell as well. So I'm curious to see how that goes. It's becoming very difficult to build Libram Paladin because there's so many cards that you want to put in there that like I don't even know where to begin, but I know there's something fun there. And honestly, I do kind of want to try a Dark Glare Priest even without Switcheroo, just because like I didn't have the ability to do so. I know it'll be worse, but like I don't know, Handmaiden still draws a lot of cards. You've got Insight, you've got other things to draw cards. It's just basically like the deck, but not drawing Switcheroo. So I'll try it. If it fails, I'll just move over to playing some Mill Priest and keep giving people cards with Shellfish and keep twisting my tongue in deck intros.
Yeah, the stuff that I'm probably going to be doing, day one's probably just going to be jamming whatever I think is the most OP, so it'll probably be mech decks and rogues. And then from there, that's when the, about 1 hour in, that's when the spice begins. That's when the countering and the experimentation starts. So, I don't know. I'm very interested in slow paladin decks, whether it's Holy Wrath or Libram. I think Paladin's got a whole bunch of very, very interesting and powerful, more control-y cards recently, so that'll be interesting. Maybe Evolve Shaman. I can finally look at like the Schooling Null Evolve Dream that I've been thinking about since the card was released, but I haven't been able to play because God, can you imagine playing Evolve Shaman into Druid and Priest? That would just be horrific. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully the meta should be able to drastically slow down, right? That's obviously the goal. And so there's a lot of decks that I have probably been very dismissive of and cards that I've been very dismissive of, but I'm going to have to go revisit, things like Gardens and Druid. So a whole bunch of stuff that I'm, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm sure I'll find something that I like by the next episode today.
Yeah. I will say that like Naga Quest Mage that you've been playing also looks pretty spicy. I don't know if it looks very good, but like it's the Parrot Quest Mage, but you get to play Nagas and do.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell
spell,
when you're
Naga
getting
spell.
killed on turn 3. It's so difficult to figure out. Does the deck suck, or does Kael'thas Druid just destroy this? What is the answer? I don't know.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to enjoy playing it, right? I'm also excited to try out, like you said, the Sunken Gardens. Like I think there's a new aggro Druid build, or some sort of aggressive Druid build around that and Aqueous Aquatic form. I don't even know the names of these cards anymore. It's been that long since I've played the format. And unironically, like, what about like Dead Man's Hand Warrior with that new 3-mana spell where you can like, is this going to be the new LPG? Say Dead Man's Hand.
It's always been the LPG.
But like you have a way to win the game now, rather than like sit there and try to grind your opponents out of resources. Like you can mill your opponent 24 cards in one turn.
Okay.
And so
that's pretty.
Like it's like the Shellfish, but also like worse, because you're playing warrior instead of priest.
No, I see what you're doing. Try to steal Roffle away. That Shellfish comparison.
I gotta get people on my side. Come on.
I just I need to, I don't know, practice again if I'm going to pick up a Dead Man's Hand once more. But yeah, I think part of the reason it was even part of the conversation was because of the fact that it ran Bulwark and it could beat
Fair. That's fair.
Switcheroo Priest. So like that's the only reason it was it's been popping up again recently.
All of the decks I feel like that I was excited to play 2 weeks ago, I'm still excited to play because now I finally get to play them and not die on turn 2, turn 3. So, I mean, even stuff like decks that might seem boring to other people, but like even Shaman with the new Amalgam and the new Totem, like actually see if it's good and not just like Theorycraft stream copium. Like Odd Rogue with some of the new cards. Like I know we've been talking a lot about like the aggro pirate deck, but just like an odd version of the deck of that deck and seeing how it feels. I think there's a lot of decks that are out there that nobody's really ever had the chance to play, right? Because if they didn't kill on turn 2, turn 3 or counter that deck, you didn't really get to do it. So, yeah, I feel like next week it's going to be a pretty long episode where we talk about all the stuff that we've been playing, what's looked good, what's not looked good, and I'm excited to record next week's episode already. Yeah, so I mean, you guys down in the comments, let us know what you guys are looking forward to playing once the expansion drops, and hope you guys tune in again next week so that you guys can figure out what the new spice is, the hot tech, the hot decks, what's going to be tearing up ladder post balance patch. So that's gonna be it for today's episode. A little bit of a shorter one. We just wanted to cover the big highlights, and it's pretty damn big highlights. We're format changing highlights. 3rd banned card ever. Kael'thas getting its 4th rendition will go into effect on Tuesday. This upcoming Tuesday, probably the normal time, right? 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific is when things normally go live on Tuesday. So in that realm. It might be a little bit later, but yeah, I know I'm excited. I know you guys are excited. Hopefully everybody that is listening is excited to play in the new balance patch as well. Corbin, Roffle, thank you again for joining me, and let the people know where they can find you guys and your content.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RoffleHS and Twitch and YouTube at Roffle.
And you can find me on Twitch at Corbett and at Corbettgames on Twitter, and I don't even know what my YouTube ad is. Is it Corbettgames? Is it Corbett? I don't remember anymore. Either way, just type in Corbett Wild, you'll find it. Thank you guys very much for listening and watching.
You guys can find me at Get Me Out on all those platforms as well. Easy, unlike Corb. I actually remember the names. Appreciate all of you guys that listen all the way to the end. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you guys again next time. Later.